The phone screen glowed in the dim light of Aaron's apartment, Samuel's contact photos staring back at him like a challenge he couldn't meet. 3 months. It had been 3 months since Samuel packed his life into boxes and drove across the country to chase his dreams in Seattle, leaving Aaron behind with nothing but empty coffee shops and half-finished design projects that suddenly felt meaningless without someone to share them with. Aaron's thumb hovered over the call button, trembling slightly. If this story hits you, drop a heart in the comments. He'd rehearsed what he might say a dozen times, but every imagined conversation ended the same way, with Samuel's polite confusion and Aaron's careful retreat back into the safety of friendship. The weight of unspoken words pressed against his chest like a physical thing, making it hard to breathe in the silence of his studio apartment. The place felt different now, hollow in ways that had nothing to do with the missing furniture or the art supplies scattered across his desk. It was Samuel's absence that made everything feel incomplete. The empty spot on the couch where he used to sprawl during their late-night brainstorming sessions. The second coffee mug that Aaron still automatically reached for every morning. The way conversations with other friends felt flat and surface level compared to the easy intimacy he'd shared with Samuel. Aaron set the phone down and walked to his drafting table, where sketches for his latest client project lay abandoned. The logo designs felt lifeless, lacking the spark that Samuel's input always brought to his work. They'd been creative partners in every sense, bouncing ideas off each other with the kind of natural rhythm that most people spent years trying to develop. Samuel understood Aaron's artistic vision in ways that went beyond professional collaboration. He saw the emotion behind every color choice, the story hidden in every curve and line. But that understanding had extended far beyond their work, hadn't it? Aaron could admit that now, alone in his apartment with 3 months of distance providing unwelcome clarity. The way Samuel's eyes would light up when Aaron explained a concept, the way he'd lean in close to examine a design, close enough that Aaron could smell his cologne and feel the warmth radiating from his skin. The way their conversations would stretch deep into the night, covering everything from childhood dreams to fears about the future, creating an intimacy that Aaron had convinced himself was just friendship. He'd been so careful, so deliberate in maintaining that boundary. Even when Samuel would fall asleep on his couch after particularly long creative sessions, even when they'd share comfortable silences that felt more intimate than most people's conversations, even when Aaron would catch Samuel looking at him with an expression that seemed to hold questions neither of them dared to ask. Aaron had built walls around his feelings, convincing himself that preserving their friendship was worth the constant ache of wanting more. The irony wasn't lost on him now. In trying to protect what they had, he'd lost it anyway. Not to rejection or conflict, but to distance and his own cowardice. Samuel's move had been planned for months, a career opportunity too good to pass up, and Aaron had supported it with the enthusiasm expected of a good friend. He'd helped with the packing, driven Samuel to the airport, and waved goodbye with a smile that felt like it might crack his face in half. Their communication had started strong, daily texts, weekly video calls, constant updates about Samuel's new job and Aaron's latest projects. But gradually, the conversations had become shorter, more surface level. Samuel was building a new life, meeting new people, and Aaron was stuck in the same apartment, surrounded by memories and what-ifs. The growing silence between them felt like a slow death, each unanswered text and delayed response another nail in the coffin of whatever they'd had. Aaron picked up his phone again, scrolling through their recent messages. Samuel's last text had been 3 days ago, a brief response to Aaron's question about his new apartment. No follow-up questions, no invitation to continue the conversation. The casual tone felt like a door closing, and Aaron couldn't shake the feeling that he was losing Samuel in ways that went far beyond geography. The worst part was the uncertainty. Had there ever been anything more than friendship between them? Or had Aaron constructed an elaborate fantasy based on wishful thinking and misread signals? The late-night conversations, the lingering touches, the way Samuel's smile seemed different when it was directed at him. Were those real moments of connection? Or just the desperate interpretations of someone who wanted so badly to believe in something that didn't exist? Aaron's reflection stared back at him from the darkened window, and he barely recognized the person looking back. When had he become someone who lived in the space between hope and fear, paralyzed by the possibility of both rejection and acceptance. The man Samuel had known was confident, decisive, willing to take creative risks that others wouldn't dare attempt. But when it came to matters of the heart, Aaron had become a coward. The phone buzzed in his hand, and Aaron's heart stopped. Samuel's name appeared on the screen, not with a text, but with an incoming call. Aaron stared at it, frozen between panic and desperate hope. This was it, the moment he'd been both longing for and dreading. His finger moved toward the answer button, then hesitated. What if Samuel was calling to tell him about someone new? Someone who'd filled the space that Aaron had been too afraid to claim. But what if he wasn't? Aaron closed his eyes, took a deep breath, and made a choice that would change everything. He answered the call. Aaron? Hey, sorry it's so late. I couldn't sleep, and Samuel's voice filled the apartment, warm and familiar and tinged with something Aaron couldn't quite identify. I've been thinking about you. About us. About how things were before I left. The words hung in the air between them, loaded with possibility and danger. Aaron's carefully constructed walls began to crumble, and for the first time in 3 months, he allowed himself to hope that maybe, just maybe, he hadn't been imagining everything after all. The morning light filtered through Aaron's apartment windows, casting long shadows across the scattered design mock-ups that covered his desk. He'd been a graphic designer for 5 years now, building a steady freelance business that allowed him the creative freedom he craved, but lately, even his most inspiring projects felt hollow. The apartment that had once felt like a sanctuary now seemed too quiet, too empty, filled with reminders of conversations that used to stretch late into the night. Aaron pushed back from his computer, rubbing his tired eyes. The logo redesign for a local coffee shop stared back at him from the screen, but his mind kept drifting to the empty chair across from his desk, where Samuel used to sit during their collaborative sessions. They'd spent countless hours there together, Aaron working on visual concepts while Samuel developed marketing strategies, their creative energies feeding off each other in ways that felt almost magical. Samuel had always understood Aaron's artistic vision like no one else ever had. While other friends would nod politely at Aaron's explanations of color theory or typography choices, Samuel would lean forward with genuine interest, asking questions that pushed Aaron's thinking in new directions. What if we made it feel more organic? Samuel would suggest, or this reminds me of that conversation we had about authenticity and branding. Those moments of creative synchronicity had felt like finding someone who spoke his language fluently. The partnership had been professional at first, born out of practical necessity when Aaron needed help with the business side of his freelance work. Samuel had just finished his marketing degree and was looking for experience, so their arrangement seemed mutually beneficial. But somewhere along the way, their working relationship had evolved into something deeper, something that blurred the lines between professional collaboration and personal connection. Aaron remembered the night they'd worked until 3 in the morning on a particularly challenging project, surviving on takeout pizza and too much coffee. When they'd finally finished, both of them exhausted but exhilarated by what they'd created together, Samuel had looked at him with this expression of pure admiration and said, "I love how your mind works, Aaron. You see things differently than anyone I know." The warmth in Samuel's voice had made Aaron's heart skip in a way that had nothing to do with caffeine. That should have been his first clue that his feelings were shifting into dangerous territory. But Aaron had been masterful at convincing himself that the flutter in his chest was just the excitement of creative collaboration. He'd built his entire adult life around careful emotional control, keeping his deeper feelings safely locked away where they couldn't complicate his friendships or professional relationships. Growing up, Aaron had learned early that vulnerability was a luxury he couldn't afford. His family had been supportive when he'd come out, but in that polite, distant way that suggested they preferred not to think too deeply about what his sexuality actually meant. He'd learned to present a version of himself that was palatable, successful, and most importantly, uncomplicated. His apartment reflected this carefully curated existence. Clean lines, neutral colors, everything in its proper place. But Samuel had a way of disrupting Aaron's carefully maintained equilibrium without even trying. He'd show up with coffee and pastries, claiming he was just in the neighborhood, and somehow Aaron's pristine workspace would transform into a comfortable chaos of sketches, notes, and animated conversations. Samuel had this infectious enthusiasm that made Aaron feel more alive, more creative, more like the person he'd always wanted to be. The late-night conversations had been the most dangerous part. After they'd finished their work, they'd often find themselves talking about everything and nothing, their dreams, their fears, their observations about life and art and the future they were trying to build. Samuel would stretch out on Aaron's couch, completely at ease, and Aaron would find himself studying the way the lamplight caught the angles of Samuel's face, the way his eyes lit up when he talked about something he was passionate about. "I want to make a real impact, you know," Samuel had said one night, his voice soft with ambition and hope. "Not just sell products, but help people tell their stories in ways that matter." Aaron had wanted to tell him that he was already doing that their work together had given Aaron a sense of purpose he'd never experienced before, but the words had felt too revealing, too close to confession. Instead, Aaron had focused on being the perfect creative partner, reliable, professional, supportive of Samuel's career ambitions, even when those ambitions started pointing toward opportunities in other cities. When Samuel had mentioned the job opening in Seattle, Aaron had encouraged him to apply, had even helped him prepare his portfolio presentation. He'd told himself he was being a good friend, but the truth was more complicated. Part of him had hoped that by being supportive, by proving his worth as a collaborator and confidant, Samuel might choose to stay. But Samuel had gotten the job, and Aaron had smiled and congratulated him and helped him plan his going-away party, all while feeling like something essential was being torn away from him. The night before Samuel left, they'd sat in Aaron's apartment one last time, ostensibly organizing the handoff of their shared projects, but really just delaying the inevitable goodbye. "I'm going to miss this," Samuel had said, gesturing around the apartment that had become their unofficial headquarters. "Working with you, I mean. You've made me better at what I do." Aaron had wanted to say so much more than "I'll miss it too," but the words had stuck in his throat. Instead, he'd helped Samuel pack the last of his things and had driven him to the airport the next morning, maintaining his composure until Samuel's plane had disappeared into the clouds. Now, 3 months later, Aaron sat in his too-quiet apartment, surrounded by the ghost of their partnership. The projects he'd taken on since Samuel's departure felt mechanical, lacking the spark that had made their collaborative work so fulfilling. He'd tried to convince himself that the emptiness was just a temporary adjustment, that he'd find his creative rhythm again once he got used to working alone. But late at night, when the apartment felt most empty, Aaron couldn't escape the truth he'd been avoiding. What he missed wasn't just Samuel's professional expertise or even their friendship, though both of those losses were real and painful. What he missed was the way Samuel had made him feel like his most authentic self, the way their connection had hinted at possibilities Aaron had been too afraid to explore. The first video call happened 2 weeks after Samuel left, and I told myself it was just to check in. Professional courtesy between former collaborators. But when his face filled my laptop screen, that familiar crooked smile lighting up his features, something shifted in my chest that had nothing to do with friendship. "Aaron, God, it's good to see you," he'd said, and the warmth in his voice made me realize how much I'd been craving exactly that tone, that specific way he said my name. We talked for an hour about his new apartment, the Seattle weather, his adjustment to the marketing firm. Normal things. Safe things. But I found myself watching the way his eyes crinkled when he laughed, memorizing the sound of his voice saying my name, storing up these moments like I was hoarding something precious. The calls became weekly, then every few days. Each time, I told myself I was just being a good friend, supporting him through a big transition. But the truth was becoming harder to ignore with every conversation. When he'd lean closer to the camera, I'd catch myself holding my breath. When he'd run his hand through his hair, that unconscious gesture I'd watched him do 1,000 times when we worked late into the night, my heart would do this stupid flutter that made me feel like a teenager with a crush. "You look tired," he said during one call, his brow furrowing with concern. "Are you taking care of yourself?" The question hit me in a way that felt too intimate, too caring. More than a friend would ask, or maybe exactly how a friend would ask, and that's what made it so confusing. I wanted to tell him that I wasn't sleeping well, that I'd been staying up too late scrolling through old photos of us working together, that I missed the sound of his laughter echoing through my apartment. Instead, I just shrugged and changed the subject. But Samuel noticed things. He always had. During our creative sessions, he'd been the one to suggest we take breaks when I got too focused, The one to order food when I forgot to eat. The one to ask if I was okay when I got quiet. Now, 3 time zones away, he was still doing it. Remember that campaign we did for the coffee shop? He asked one evening, his voice soft with nostalgia. You stayed up until 4 in the morning perfecting that logo. You stayed up with me. I reminded him, and the memory hit me like a physical ache. We'd been sitting on my couch, laptops balanced on our knees, and somewhere around midnight he'd moved closer so he could see my screen better. His shoulder had pressed against mine, and I'd spent the rest of the night hyper-aware of every point of contact between us. I couldn't leave you to suffer alone, he said, and something in his tone made me look up from my own screen to really focus on his face. There was something there, in his expression, that I couldn't quite read. We were a good team. Were. Past tense. The words settled heavy in my chest. Yeah, I managed. We were. The conversations started lasting longer. 2 hours became 3 became 4. We'd talk until one of us had to go to work, or until the exhaustion finally won. Sometimes we'd just sit in comfortable silence, both of us working on our respective projects, the video call a window between our separate worlds. It was during one of these marathon sessions that I realized I was in trouble. Real trouble. Samuel was telling me about his weekend, some hiking trip he'd taken with coworkers, and I found myself jealous. Not just of the experience, but of the people who got to spend time with him. People who got to see him laugh in person, who got to exist in the same physical space as him. I wish you could have been there, he said, almost offhandedly. You would have loved the view from the summit. The casual way he said it, like it was natural to want me there, made my heart race. I wanted to ask what he meant. I wanted to know if he missed me the way I missed him, if he thought about me when he was exploring his new city, if he wished I was there for reasons that went beyond friendship. Instead, I just smiled and said, send me pictures next time. But the wanting was getting harder to hide. When he'd stretch during our calls, his shirt riding up just slightly, I'd have to look away. When he'd get excited about something and lean closer to the camera, talking fast with his hands gesturing, I'd find myself completely captivated by the animation in his face. When he'd say goodnight, his voice soft and warm, I'd sit in the quiet of my apartment afterward, replaying the sound of it. The worst part was the inside jokes. We'd developed this language over the years of working together, references and callbacks that no one else would understand. They should have felt like remnants of our past, but instead they felt like secrets we were keeping, intimate knowledge that belonged only to us. Oh, that's very Tuesday at 2 a.m. of you, he said one night when I showed him a particularly abstract design I was working on. I laughed, remembering. Tuesday at 2 a.m. had been our code for the kind of creative breakthrough that only happened when you were delirious with exhaustion and running on nothing but inspiration and caffeine. The fact that he still remembered, still referenced it, made me feel like maybe I wasn't the only one holding on to these pieces of us. Some things never change, I said, and he smiled in a way that made my chest tight. I hope not, he replied, and the weight of those 3 words settled between us like a promise or a prayer. The realization hit me fully during a call in early November. Samuel was telling me about his day, something mundane about a meeting that had run long, and I found myself just watching him. The way his mouth moved when he talked, the way his eyes lit up when he got to a funny part of the story, the way he'd pause and look directly at the camera like he was looking right at me. I was in love with him. Had been for months, maybe years. All those late nights, all those moments when our collaboration had felt like something more, all those times I'd caught myself staring at him when he wasn't looking. It had all been leading to this moment of crystal clear recognition. I was in love with Samuel, and he was 2,000 miles away, building a new life without me. The knowledge sat in my chest like a stone, heavy and undeniable. Every conversation after that became a careful dance around this truth. I'd catch myself about to say something too revealing, about to ask a question that would expose how much he meant to me. The casual, I miss you, that I wanted to say at the end of every call stayed trapped in my throat, too loaded with meaning to risk. But the missing was becoming impossible to ignore. I missed the way he'd hum while he worked, the way he'd steal bites of my food when we ordered takeout, the way he'd fall asleep on my couch during late work sessions. I missed having someone who understood my creative process, who could look at my work and immediately know what I was trying to achieve. I missed having him in my space, in my life, in my daily routine. Most of all, I missed the possibility of something more. The potential that had always hummed between us, unspoken but present. Now, with distance and time stretching between us, that possibility felt like it was slipping away, and I didn't know how to hold on to it without risking everything we'd built. The question that had been building in my chest for weeks finally formed itself into words I couldn't ignore. Do you miss me? Not just as a friend, not just as a creative partner, but me. The way I miss you. The way that makes my chest ache and my days feel incomplete. But asking meant risking the answer. And I wasn't sure I was brave enough for that kind of truth. The question hung between us like a bridge I'd built, but was too terrified to cross. Samuel's face filled my laptop screen, his features softened by the late-night lighting of his Seattle apartment, and I could see the exact moment my words registered. Do you miss me? I'd asked, my voice barely above a whisper, every syllable carrying 3 months of longing I tried so desperately to hide. Then he laughed. It wasn't a cruel laugh, but it might as well have been. The sound cut through me like glass, sharp and unexpected, and I felt my heart drop into my stomach with a sickening thud. Of course he was laughing. Of course this was funny to him. Here I was, a grown man asking such a pathetic question, wearing my heart on my sleeve like some lovesick teenager who couldn't tell the difference between friendship and something more. Aaron, Samuel said through his laughter, shaking his head slightly, and I wanted to disappear. I wanted to close the laptop, crawl under my covers, and pretend this conversation had never happened. The vulnerability I'd spent weeks building up to, the courage I'd finally mustered to ask this simple question that felt anything but simple, it all crumbled in the face of his amusement. I stared at the screen, watching him try to compose himself, and felt the familiar walls I'd spent years constructing slam back into place. This was exactly why I didn't do this. This was exactly why I kept my feelings locked away where they couldn't hurt anyone, especially not me. Samuel was my friend, my creative partner, someone who understood my work and my dreams, and I'd just ruined it all by reading too much into late-night conversations and lingering glances through a computer screen. I'm sorry, I started to say, already reaching for the laptop to end the call, to salvage whatever dignity I had left. I didn't mean to, but Samuel was still laughing, and now he was running his hands through his hair in that way he did when he was processing something complicated. The gesture was so familiar, so achingly Samuel, that it made my chest tighten with a mixture of affection and mortification. How many times had I watched him do that exact thing during our late-night work sessions? How many times had I found it endearing instead of seeing it for what it obviously was? Nervous energy, discomfort, the physical manifestation of someone trying to figure out how to let their friend down easy. Aaron, wait, he said, but I was already spiraling, already retreating into the safety of assumption and self-protection. The laughter had confirmed everything I'd feared about myself, about us, about the foolish hope I'd been nurturing like some secret garden that was never meant to see sunlight. I thought about all the video calls we'd had over the past 3 months, all the moments I'd misinterpreted as something more than friendship. The way his eyes would light up when I called, the way our conversations would stretch long into the night, the way he'd ask about my day with genuine interest and remember the smallest details I'd mentioned in passing. I'd built an entire fantasy around these interactions, convinced myself that the connection I felt was mutual, that the ache in my chest when we hung up was something he felt too. But friends missed each other. That was normal. That was allowed. What wasn't normal was the way I missed him, like a constant low-grade fever, like background music I couldn't turn off, like waking up every morning and feeling surprised all over again that he wasn't part of my daily routine anymore. What wasn't normal was the way I caught myself staring at his contact information, typing messages I never sent, saving screenshots of his rare social media posts just to have something new to look at. The laughter was dying down now, but the damage was done. I could see Samuel's face more clearly as he settled back into his chair, and there was something in his expression that I couldn't quite read. Not mockery, exactly, but not the gentle rejection I was bracing myself for either. He looked almost surprised, confused, like my question had caught him off guard in a way that went beyond simple amusement. You really don't know, do you? He said quietly, and his voice had changed completely. The laughter was gone, replaced by something softer, more serious. But I was too far gone in my own spiral of embarrassment to process the shift in his tone. I shook my head, not trusting my voice, not sure what I was supposed to know or not know. All I knew was that I'd asked a question that had made him laugh, and now I was sitting here feeling exposed and ridiculous, wondering how I'd managed to misread our entire friendship so completely. "Aaron," Samuel said again, and this time my name sounded different coming from his lips. Not amused, not pitying, but something else entirely. Something that made me look up at the screen despite my mortification, something that made me pause with my finger hovering over the disconnect button. The silence stretched between us, heavy with unspoken words and misunderstood intentions. I could hear my own heartbeat in my ears, could feel the familiar tightness in my chest that came with emotional vulnerability. This was why I didn't do this. This was why I kept my feelings carefully compartmentalized, why I'd spent years perfecting the art of emotional distance. Because moments like this, moments where you laid yourself bare only to realize you'd been playing a game no one else knew existed, were exactly what I'd been trying to avoid. But Samuel wasn't laughing anymore. He was looking at me through the screen with an intensity that made my breath catch, and for a moment, I wondered if maybe I'd misunderstood something fundamental about his reaction. Maybe the laughter hadn't been about what I thought it was about. Maybe. No, I couldn't let myself go down that road again. I'd already made enough of a fool of myself for one night. "I should go," I said, my voice hoarse with embarrassment and unshed tears. "It's late, and you probably have work tomorrow, and I just—" "Aaron, please don't hang up," Samuel interrupted, and there was something almost desperate in his voice that made me freeze. "Please, just give me a second to explain." I stared at him through the screen, at this man who'd been my closest friend and creative partner, who'd understood my artistic vision like no one else ever had, who'd made me laugh and challenged me and supported me through every creative breakthrough and professional setback. The same man who'd just laughed at my most vulnerable question, who was now asking me not to hang up with an expression I couldn't quite decipher. The cursor blinked in the corner of my screen, waiting for my decision. End the call and retreat back into the safety of emotional distance, or stay and risk further humiliation. Stay and hear whatever explanation he thought would make this better, whatever gentle way he'd found to let me down without completely destroying our friendship. I looked at Samuel's face one more time, at the way he was leaning forward slightly, at the way his eyes seemed to be pleading with me across the digital divide. And despite every instinct telling me to protect myself, despite the voice in my head screaming that I'd already exposed too much, I found myself nodding. "Okay," I whispered. "I'm listening." My finger hovers over the red button on my phone screen, ready to end this call and retreat back into the safety of my carefully constructed walls. The humiliation burns through my chest like acid, and I can't bear to look at Samuel's face on the screen anymore. His laughter still echoes in my ears, confirming every fear I've ever had about being foolish enough to believe there could be something more between us. "Aaron, wait." Samuel's voice cuts through my spiral of shame, and something in his tone makes me pause. The laughter is completely gone now, replaced by something urgent and raw. "Please don't hang up. You really don't know, do you?" I force myself to look at the screen, and what I see there stops me cold. Samuel's expression has shifted entirely. The casual smile from moments before has vanished, replaced by something vulnerable and almost desperate. His eyes are wide, searching my face through the camera with an intensity that makes my heart stutter. "Don't know what?" I manage to whisper, my voice barely audible even to myself. Part of me wants to end this call immediately, to save us both from whatever awkward explanation is coming. But there's something in Samuel's expression that keeps my finger frozen above the disconnect button. Samuel runs a hand through his hair, a gesture I've seen him make countless times when he's trying to find the right words. "I wasn't laughing at you, Aaron. God, I would never laugh at you for asking that." He leans closer to his camera, and I can see the exhaustion in his eyes, the way his shoulders carry tension I hadn't noticed before. "I laugh because I couldn't believe you had to ask." The words hit me like a physical blow, but not in the way I expected. Instead of the crushing weight of rejection, there's something else, a crack in the wall I've built around my heart, letting in a sliver of light I'm afraid to trust. "What do you mean?" I ask, my voice still shaky but stronger now. I can feel my pulse hammering in my throat, and I'm grateful he can't see how my hands are trembling. Samuel's gaze drops for a moment, and when he looks back up, there's a vulnerability there that I've never seen before. "Aaron, I think about you every single day. I wake up wanting to text you about something stupid I saw on the way to work. I go to sleep wondering what you're doing, if you're happy, if you're thinking about me too. His voice cracks slightly on the last words, and I feel something shift in my chest, a loosening of the knot that's been there for months. I stare at him through the screen, trying to process what he's saying. The careful distance I've maintained, the walls I've built to protect myself from exactly this kind of hope, they're crumbling with each word he speaks. You do? The question comes out smaller than I intended, but Samuel's expression softens in response. Of course I do. How could you think I don't? He shakes his head, and there's something almost frustrated in his voice now. Aaron, you're the first person I want to talk to when something good happens. You're the first person I want to call when everything goes wrong. Moving here was supposed to be this amazing opportunity, but half the time I just feel like I'm missing the most important part of my life. The words wash over me like a tide, and I feel myself drowning in possibility. This is everything I've wanted to hear, everything I've been afraid to hope for. But the fear is still there, clawing at the edges of my consciousness. But you seem so focused on your career, I say, grasping for the safety of my old assumptions. You never said anything about. About what? About missing you. Samuel's laugh is different this time, softer, more self-deprecating. Aaron, I've been terrified that if I told you how much I missed you, how much I think about you, you'd think I was being clingy or needy. I thought you were happy to have some space for me. The irony hits me like a punch to the gut. All these months, we've been tiptoeing around each other, both afraid of the same thing, of being too much, of wanting too much, of crossing a line that might destroy what we have. I've been miserable, I admit, the words tumbling out before I can stop them. I've been pretending everything is fine, that I'm happy for you, that I don't spend half my time staring at my phone hoping you'll call. I take a shaky breath, feeling exposed but somehow lighter. I miss you so much it physically hurts sometimes. Samuel's expression shifts again, and I see something I've never seen before, relief mixed with something deeper, something that makes my heart race with terrifying possibility. Aaron, he says softly, and my name sounds different in his voice now, weighted with meaning I'm finally allowing myself to hear. I laugh because I couldn't believe you had to ask if I missed you. I thought it was obvious. I thought you could see right through me. I lean closer to my phone screen, studying his face, looking for any sign that this is just wishful thinking on my part. But what I see there is genuine, raw, and completely unguarded. Samuel is looking at me the way I've been looking at him for months, with longing and hope and fear all tangled together. I can't see through you, I whisper. I've been so afraid of reading too much into things, of wanting something that wasn't there. It's there, Samuel says immediately, his voice firm with conviction. God, Aaron, it's been there for so long I thought you knew. I thought you were just being polite by not mentioning it. The laughter that escapes me is shaky, but genuine. We're both idiots, aren't we? Complete idiots, Samuel agrees, and his smile is soft and real and directed entirely at me. But maybe we can be idiots together. The possibility hangs between us through the screen, fragile and precious and terrifying. I can feel myself standing at the edge of something that could change everything. And for the first time in months, I'm not running away from it. Samuel, I start, then stop, not sure how to put into words what I'm feeling. The fear is still there, but it's being overwhelmed by something stronger, hope, and the growing realization that maybe, just maybe, I'm not alone in this. I know, he says softly, and somehow he does know. He sees it in my face, hears it in my voice, understands what I'm too scared to say out loud yet. We sit in silence for a moment, looking at each other through our screens, and I feel something fundamental shifting between us. The careful distance we've maintained is dissolving, replaced by something honest and vulnerable and real. So what do we do now? I ask, my voice barely above a whisper. Samuel's smile is tentative but genuine. I don't know, he admits. But I know I don't want to go back to pretending I don't miss you every single day. The silence stretched between us, thick with possibility and terror. Samuel's face had gone completely serious, his eyes searching mine through the screen with an intensity that made my heart hammer against my ribs. The laughter had died away completely, replaced by something raw and vulnerable that I'd never seen before. Aaron, he said, and my name sounded different in his voice now, softer somehow, like he was handling something precious. Every single day. The words hit me like a physical blow. I felt my breath catch, my grip tightening on my phone until my knuckles went white. What? Every single day? He repeated, leaning closer to his camera. I miss you every single day. I wake up thinking about you. I go to sleep thinking about you. I see something funny, and my first instinct is to text you. I hear a song and wonder if you'd like it. I pass coffee shops and remember how you take your order. Extra shot, oat milk, no sugar because you say the coffee should speak for itself. His voice cracked slightly on the last words. I stared at him, my mind reeling. This wasn't what I'd expected. This wasn't the gentle letdown or the awkward deflection I prepared myself for. This was Samuel, my Samuel, telling me things that sounded like. I thought I was going crazy. I whispered. You were going crazy? Samuel laughed. But it was different now, not the dismissive sound from before, but something broken and relieved. Aaron, I've been miserable. Completely, utterly miserable. I took this job thinking it would be this great adventure, this chance to prove myself, and instead I've been counting down the days until I could come home. Not to Seattle, home to you. My throat felt tight. Samuel, I laughed because I couldn't believe you had to ask, he continued, his words tumbling out faster now, like a dam had burst. I've been so afraid of seeming clingy, of being that friend who can't handle a little distance. I've been editing my texts to you, deleting half the things I want to say because I'm terrified of coming across as desperate. And here you are, asking if I miss you like there's any universe where the answer could be no. I pressed my palm against my forehead, trying to process everything he was saying. I've been doing the same thing. Editing texts, stopping myself from calling. I must have typed I miss you 100 times and deleted it every single time. Why? He asked, and there was something almost desperate in his voice. Why didn't you send it? I looked at him through the screen, at the way his hair was mussed from running his hands through it, at the shadows under his eyes that suggested he'd been sleeping as poorly as I had. Because I was afraid it meant something different for me than it did for you. Samuel went very still. Different how? This was it. The moment I'd been terrifying myself with for months. The moment that would either change everything or destroy the most important friendship I'd ever had. I could feel my heart beating so hard I was sure he could hear it through the phone. Because when I miss you, it's not just missing my friend, I said quietly. It's missing the way you laugh at my terrible jokes. It's missing how you always know exactly what I'm thinking when I'm working on a design. It's missing the way you look at me sometimes, like you're seeing something in me that I didn't even know was there. It's missing falling asleep on your couch after working late and waking up with your jacket draped over me. It's missing. I stopped, the words catching in my throat. It's missing what, Aaron? Samuel's voice was barely above a whisper. It's missing being in love with you. I finished, the words coming out in a rush. And not being able to do anything about it. Samuel's eyes widened, and for a moment I thought I'd made a terrible mistake. The silence stretched between us again, but this time it felt different. Not heavy with unspoken things, but charged with possibility. Aaron, he said finally, and there was something in his voice that made my chest tight with hope. You beautiful idiot. I blinked. What? You're in love with me, he said, and there was wonder in his voice, like he was testing out the words. You're actually in love with me. I started, then stopped. Is that okay? Samuel laughed again, but this time it was pure joy, bright and infectious. Okay, Aaron, I've been in love with you for so long I can't remember when it started. I thought you were straight. I thought I was just your friend who happened to be inconveniently gay and hopelessly gone on you. The world seemed to tilt sideways. You're gay? Spectacularly gay, Samuel said, grinning now. And spectacularly in love with you. I can't believe we've been dancing around this for months. I felt something break open in my chest, something that had been locked tight for so long I'd forgotten it was there. You're in love with me. I repeated, like saying it out loud would make it more real. Completely gone, Samuel confirmed. Head over heels, can't think straight. Well, can't think gay either, apparently, absolutely smitten with you. I started laughing, and once I started I couldn't stop. It was relief and joy and disbelief all tangled together, bubbling up from somewhere deep inside me. We're both idiots. The biggest idiots, Samuel agreed, laughing with me. We've been miserable for months when we could have been. What could we have been, Aaron? I looked at him through the screen, at his bright eyes and his ridiculous grin, and felt my heart do something complicated in my chest. Happy, I said simply. We could have been happy. We can still be happy, Samuel said, his voice soft with promise. Distance is just distance. This is real. I nodded, feeling tears prick at the corners of my eyes. This is real. I love you, Samuel said, and the words hung in the air between us like a bridge. I love you too, I whispered back, and watched his face light up like sunrise. The silence that followed our confessions felt different now, not heavy with unspoken words, but warm with possibility. Samuel's face on my screen looked softer somehow, his eyes bright with something I'd never dared to hope I'd see there. The distance between us suddenly felt both impossibly vast and surprisingly manageable. So, Samuel said, his voice carrying that familiar hint of nervous laughter, what do we do now? I found myself smiling, really smiling, for the first time in months. I don't know, I admitted. I never thought I'd get this far. You never thought you'd get to the part where I told you I loved you back? His eyebrows raised in that teasing way that used to make my stomach flip, and still did, apparently. Honestly, no. I shifted in my chair, suddenly aware of how cramped my apartment felt compared to the expansive future that seemed to be opening up before us. I was pretty convinced you were straight and completely out of my league. Samuel laughed, shaking his head. Aaron, you realize I spent 2 years finding excuses to work late just so we could have those conversations, right? I thought I was being so obvious. You were talking about work stuff. I was talking about everything except what I actually wanted to say. His expression grew more serious, which was that I was falling for my best friend and had no idea what to do about it. The weight of all those missed opportunities settled between us, but it didn't feel tragic anymore. It felt like the foundation of something real. When are you coming home for a visit? I asked, the question carrying more weight than it ever had before. I was thinking about Christmas, but Samuel paused, running a hand through his hair. What if I came sooner? Like next month? Next month. My heart jumped. Can you get the time off? I've got vacation days I haven't used. And honestly, after tonight, I don't think I can wait until Christmas to see you. His cheeks flushed slightly. Is that crazy? Flying across the country because I miss my boyfriend? The word hung in the air between us, tentative and hopeful. Boyfriend, I repeated, testing how it felt. I like the sound of that. Me too. Samuel's smile was radiant. Though I should probably warn you, I'm going to be terrible at this long-distance thing. I'm already planning to call you every day. Every day. I pretended to consider this. That might interfere with my busy schedule of missing you and staring at my phone. Well, when you put it like that. Samuel's expression grew more thoughtful. Aaron, I need to ask you something, and I want you to be honest with me. My stomach tightened slightly. Okay. Have you thought about what this means long-term? Because I love my job here, but I love you more. And if we're really doing this, I want to know we're both thinking about the same future. The question I'd been afraid to even consider was suddenly right there in front of us. You mean like one of us moving? I mean like us figuring out how to build a life together instead of just managing the distance. Samuel leaned closer to his camera, his voice earnest. I've been thinking about it since the day I left, actually. There are design firms in your city, and honestly, the work I'm doing here, it's good, but it's not worth being away from you. I felt something tight in my chest loosen. You'd really consider moving back? Aaron, I'd consider anything if it meant waking up in the same time zone as you. Samuel's voice softened. But I want to know what you want. Really want, not just what you think I want to hear. I took a deep breath, feeling the last of my carefully constructed walls crumble. I want you to come home. Not just for a visit, but for good. I want to have breakfast with you and fight about what to watch on Netflix and introduce you to people as my boyfriend without having to explain why you live 3,000 miles away. Yeah. Samuel's smile was brilliant. Yeah. And I want to help you find a job here. And I want to show you all the places I've discovered since you left. And I want to stop editing every text I send you because I'm afraid it sounds too much like I'm in love with you. Good, Samuel said firmly. Because I want all of that too. And I want to stop pretending that every video call isn't the best part of my day. We sat there grinning at each other through our screens, the future suddenly feeling tangible and bright. The logistics would be complicated, job searches and lease negotiations and the 1,000 small details of building a life together. But for the first time in months, those challenges felt like adventures rather than obstacles. So, I said, settling back in my chair with a contentment I hadn't felt in ages, tell me about your day. And don't leave anything out this time. Samuel's laugh was warm and unguarded. Well, I spent most of it thinking about calling you, then chickening out, then thinking about calling you again. Sounds familiar, I murmured and realized that this easy intimacy, this freedom to be completely honest, was what I'd been missing all along. Not just Samuel, but the possibility of being fully myself with someone who loved me back. As Samuel launched into the story of his day, I found myself already planning tomorrow's call, next month's visit, and the conversation we'd have about him coming home for good. The distance between us remained the same, but everything else had changed completely.